Broadcasting from Ultimo Cigars in Tulsa, Oklahoma, it's Smoking Sounds, the ultimate podcast for cigar and pipe enthusiasts who savor the perfect blend of tobacco while immersing themselves in the world of soulful music. Join us as we explore the rich flavors of premium cigars, delve into the art of pipe smoking, and groove to the rhythm of carefully curated tunes. From expert interviews and cigar pairings to musical recommendations that elevate your smoking experience, Smoking Sounds is your go-to source for all things cigars, pipes, and music. Ignite your passion and indulge in the harmonious fusion of premium tobacco and soulful melodies with Smoking Sounds, where every puff is accompanied by the perfect soundtrack. Hello again, everybody. I am Sean, one of the hosts of Smoking Sounds, and joining me is the Big Show. It's Justin!
Well, hello, everybody. It's the Big Show, and I will take the belts at the Royal Rumble, baby.
What's going on, brother?
Hey, once again, we have left the confines of the Carhole Lounge.
That's right.
We're at a new locale. This is Ultimo Cigars, where Mr. Tomas was very kind to let us come in and bug him about cigars and the business. Now, Mr. Tomas is a very first for us, for he is a professional cigar roller. So he's not just an amateur smoker like us. He actually kind of does this for a living.
Hey,
now,
we got the Hot House Habano playlist going here. That
you guys definitely need to avail yourselves of that. It's the Latin jazz playlist that I put together. If you were in marching band in the 80s, you will recognize names like Maynard Ferguson, like Doc Severinsen. They're on this list. So, we wanted to kind of get this in. Also to kind of help keep you warm during these cold winter days.
That's right. And sitting in again with us is Chase. You can find him on the social media at pipes_and_sticks. Chase, say hello to everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Mr. Chase, welcome back.
Hello, everybody. So,
hey,
we'll be sharing the mic. So if you got something you want to ask Tomas, just let me know. I'll be more than happy to pass it along. But so I will tell you guys, I've had some people reach out to me on social media, and they were talking about how excited they are for this, and they can't wait to hear all your words of wisdom, Tomas. And I said, me and Justin have the easy job this week. All we have to do is introduce Tomas, and then just sit back and shut up and let him talk, because it's what he does here is absolutely fantastic.
Oh my gosh.
His cigars are second to none. I'll say I'm a little biased because I absolutely I love coming to Ultimo. I absolutely love Tomas as an individual, and I'm so happy and so thankful for you to join us today. So we will pass the mic. We will hand the floor to you, Tomas, and let you kind of introduce yourself and tell the listeners kind of how Ultimo started and all that good stuff.
Sure, yeah. So we've been up in the business for the last 5 years here in Tulsa. We hand roll all of our cigars in-house. We're one of 50 factories in the U.S. that hand roll cigars, and the only one in the Mid-America region. So very limited competition in what we do. So it's easy to stand out when you're the only one doing it.
That's right.
Now, so people can find you. You do have an online shop.
Yes, we have our website, ultimocigars.com, where people can order some of our standard cigars that we produce here in-house. We also do custom stuff, exclusive blending, things like that. You can find us on social media at Ultimo Cigars on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. So
excellent.
Yeah, that's a must follow for everybody. And again, we're still very, very thankful for we've got a partnership with a gentleman named Dirk out of Georgia, Tomas, and he runs a website, Cigars for Beginners, and it's for anybody that's looking to get into cigars, that just kind of want to know what are the different shades of wrappers and things like that, which you know all too well with the, because you blend your own cigars as well, right? You're not just
yeah, it's all done in-house. So I source tobacco from all over the world. We have over 60 different types of leaf on hand from different regions around the globe, and that's what I use in the blending process. So it's creating the blends and then developing the cigars using our proprietary rolling processes and how we manage our tobacco. It's very different than traditional manufacturing, so it allows us to be able to have a lot more flexibility and create some really unique cigars that you normally wouldn't be able to get a hold of somewhere else.
And I'll tell you, I first stepped into Ultimo, God, it was probably 2020. It's been several years ago, and I will tell you, I'd never met you before, and this is the story that I love to tell, so I hope you don't mind me telling this real quick, but I literally had walked 2 steps in the door and you introduced yourself to me, and next thing I knew we were in your walk-in humidor and you were explaining to me about and I tell everybody, every time I come in here I feel like I leave with more of an education. It's just your hospitality is second to none. It makes you want to come to shop at Ultimo. And
well, I'm very passionate about what I do, and I enjoy imparting knowledge and helping people walk away from here feeling like they can also be passionate about what we do here. Yeah,
I am, and my brother Adam, if you're listening, he stole my Ultimo hat, my camouflage one that you haven't gotten restocked.
Oh my gosh!
So, he may have to go through the table again, Justin.
Oh, I would. I'd send him. He took your hat. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
What are you supposed to do?
Well, hey, as long as he's supporting Tomas, that means more people get to see it, right?
Absolutely.
So also now you do coffee, and now is that blended in-house as well?
Yeah, so I roast my own coffee that we offer in-house. It's a Brazilian and Nicaraguan roast. We also do our own espresso that is Brazilian and Colombian. We have cigars that specifically pair with that coffee and with that espresso. It's meant to be complementary in terms of pH balance with acidity along with alkaline in the tobacco, but also complementary origins. So the cigars that go along with the coffee complement this coffee by having same origin tobacco as the coffee beans. Same thing with the espresso as well.
Oh, that is excellent. And all that is, again, you can find that on your website?
Yes.
Yeah, and if you haven't had, again, and that's another thing, is I'm not a coffee drinker. I mean, I do drink coffee, but what is it, Cremosa? Is that?
Yeah, Cremosa is the name of the cigar and the coffee, and then the espresso is called Hello Darkness.
Hello Darkness, right on.
That Cremosa, I'm telling you, I come over to buy a cigar, and Tomas says, man, you got to try my coffee. And this is right when it came out. And you didn't need anything. I mean, it was just like, and the cigar, the Cremosa cigar, it's, I explain it, it's buttery and creamy, just like that coffee. I hope I'm explaining it right, but, oh man, it's so good. It's so good.
See, guys, I've been working on Sean for a while. He doesn't drink coffee, doesn't drink liquor really, and he doesn't drink beer. I tell you, I have a long way to go, but we will get him there. Pretty soon he'll be knocking back whiskey sours and smoking cigars and all the like. So it's a work in progress. So everybody just be patient.
Well, and you do a lot of work with local establishments, breweries, Catholic organizations. Tell the listeners a little bit about that, because one of your favorite cigars of mine was the D's Nuts.
Yes.
And I know that was with one of the local brewers.
Correct.
And it was a barber pole cigar, and it was just absolutely fantastic. And when you ran out, Tulsa Hill Cigars had a couple, and I went and bought all of them that they had. Yeah. But yeah, so talk a little bit about, you're just in Tulsa, things you're doing.
So when I started up the business here, I started with one blend, which is our Scissor Tail. It's our flagship cigar. We use that cigar for all of our weddings, corporate events, the live cigar rolling things that we do. We do a lot of stuff, celebrity stuff for the Paycom Center in Oklahoma City and BOK here on occasion. And so we've done those same cigars with Jonas Brothers and Bad Bunny, Zach Brown Band, Luke Combs. A lot of different acts.
Listen to a veritable who's who there.
Hey.
Yeah.
And didn't you say that you? Well, I was going to ask about Drake. I don't know if you can mention that.
Well, that one we don't have confirmation on that one yet.
Yeah.
But,
okay. Stay tuned, folks. Stay tuned.
When there are cigar smokers coming through the larger arenas, I'm the guy that they call to come in and help entertain the acts and their crew and stuff like that through the live cigar rolling. And so our flagship scissor tail is what I started this whole business off of. Once I started taking off, I had this concept of doing a series of cigars that we call a craft series, which are in conjunction and partnerships with local distilleries and breweries, making cigars that specifically pair with their products.
Oh.
So the first one was with Dead Armadillo Brewery here in Tulsa, and we make a cigar that pairs specifically with their amber beer. The second one was a cigar that we did with Nothing's Left Brewing, which is called the D's Nuts.
That's it.
Yeah, so we also work
That's the
with
one.
we work with Red Fork Distillery to make one that pairs with their bourbon, and then we also have a couple other clients that we do cigars for, like Hochtown Distillery in Southeast Oklahoma. We make 2 cigars for them that are exclusive at the distillery. We don't sell it; you can only get it at the distillery.
Oh, wow.
So we have a couple things like that too.
And now, do you had one, or you still do one with the firefighters?
Yeah, so we do the every year we relaunch the Oklahoma Burn Camp cigar. Burn Camp is an organization for children who suffer burn trauma. It's a camp for them to be able to experience a social setting where the camp counselors, along with the children, all kind of have similar experiences, so they don't have to feel different when they're in these
Right.
places.
They don't have to be sensitive about
Correct.
their excellent. That is
Yeah,
so.
so
that
it's
is
a great
wonderful.
organization, and so we make a cigar called Burn Camp. The concept behind it was to kind of have something that had something reminiscent of camp and graham cracker and s'mores. So though our cigars are not infused, but they do have kind of an essence of that flavor profile, and kind of just reminds you of being at camp. And that was kind of the concept behind that cigar. And then all the proceeds go to the organization.
That is so awesome. And if you guys didn't hear that, that was the fire truck sirens endorsing
by.
Tomas.
You know,
behind
that
us. That was not planned. We did not pay him to do that, so that was meant to be.
So, by the way, yeah, let us know when the next burn camp rolls out. That is definitely a cause worth promoting. And if I can both smoke a cigar and make a difference, that's there's very little bit there's not much better than that.
Absolutely.
I know, and like the Zippo company will sell like to replant trees and this sort of thing, so yeah, definitely keep us in mind when those roll out again, because definitely be looking forward to getting a few of those.
Definitely.
So, are you from a long line of cigars rollers? Are you a first generation? How did you get into cigar rolling?
So I'm actually the first generation doing what I do in my family. But when I was 19, I got into the cigar business in Arizona. I used to work 3 jobs, quit those 3 jobs, travel, come back, get 3 new jobs.
Oh, wow.
And I was in the process of looking for another job, and met this guy who just opened up a second cigar store, needed somebody to run the register. Originally, he did not want to hire me, so I told him, I'll tell you what, I'll work for free for 2 days. If you don't like me, I'll go away. If everything works out, I promise I'll stay and I'll help your company grow. Within about a year and a half, I was managing, and then I started helping design a new shop. He moved to California, left me in charge of the business after 2 years, and grew to 5 retail stores. We started doing a lot more importing, so I spent time going to Nicaragua and Dominican Republic and Honduras, working with major manufacturers, developing blends, importing the cigars that we sold through our website called TNT Cigars that I designed and created. The website went on to be very successful. He and I had some disagreements. After being with him for 7 years, I decided to just leave the cigar industry. Went into the liquor industry for about 13 years, and built a wine company for a Native American tribe. And while I was doing that, I ended up in Nebraska working with the Winnebago tribe, and it was their CEO of their corporation called Ho Chunk. He was asking about my past experience, work experience. We talked about cigars, and the idea of every cigar store has a cigar store Indian statue, but there aren't any Native American tribes that have premium hand-rolled cigar brands. Some have cigarettes and stuff, but none that are doing hand-rolled cigars. So my original concept was going to be to import cigars, and then be able to use my past relationships to be able to develop blends and import on behalf of these tribes. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way, but fortunate for myself, I was able to be kind of nimble in how I go about doing the business. Changed up my business model. I already went through that process of licensing and permits and everything else that I needed to be able to import, which is the same as being a manufacturer. So I said, well, I might as well just make cigars then.
Yeah.
So I started here in this little shop. I had just lost my job, and I had a little table with just space heaters to keep my feet warm and rolling that scissor tail blend. Luckily for me, I had good relationships around town from being in the wine business, and it was actually Tulsa Hill cigar sellers.
Okay, yeah.
Wow.
When I first approached them, I said, hey, you know what? I'm not in the liquor business anymore. I know you know me from that, but I'm about to make some cigars. And they said, you know what? Just let us know when you're ready. Like, no questions asked. And then it was through them when somebody came to them, this gentleman named Jonathan Taylor, came to them and said, hey, I'm doing an event for Tulsa Air and Space Museum. Do you know anybody who rolls cigars? They said, you know what? We know this guy. He put us in charge. So by the time I got all my final permits and everything was ready to go, I already had a customer base starting up. And that's just based off of reputation.
Yeah. So and it just kind of grew organically.
And that's what been my model this whole time, is just allow things to grow organically. You know, now we have clients in Dubai, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, London, Ireland, all over the U.S. that we do custom stuff. So we've got a pretty big expanse of customers around the world, and it just started just organic. Everything's organic. I don't do any paid promotion or anything like that.
And so when you have your customers that are, in Dubai, is it kind of the same process where they give you 3 or 4 suggestions of these are cigars that I like, and then you kind of blend off of that the same way?
Yeah. So it's part of. So once I developed the original scissor tail, then started developing our craft series, then I started developing more blends that we offer, and it was through demand, people saying, hey, you know what, I like this cigar. Can you make me a cigar that tastes like it? Or I like these cigars. Can you make me a cigar? And so I said, you know what, this is, again, it's organic, is what people are asking for. So I decided I'm going to put together a process by which we can create these custom exclusive blends for individuals who want a cigar designed to their taste. And so that's where our master blend process, or our master blend experience, came from. And so what it is basically, a client can go to our website, fill out the profile, and there's 12 different tasting notes, and give us some feedback on what they like about cigars, and then they give us a list of 3 or 4 cigars that they enjoy. And then I'll go out, purchase the cigars, smoke the cigars, extrapolate common flavor elements, residual oils, construction, draw characteristics, smoke density, just understanding what it is that person enjoys about those particular cigars and what is common among those cigars. And then kind of cross-reference with their profile and their taste preferences.
So I just have to stop at this one, just for our the other half of our listeners, or I should say maybe the third. So do you ever do like pipe tobacco or blends, maybe a cigar blend for a pipe?
We don't do pipe, and the reason for that is, again, what we do is considered by the FDA and the TTB as premium hand-rolled cigars. So when you go into doing anything that adds flavor additive or modifies the tobacco flavor or mixes with stuff that's non-tobacco, then it becomes a different category of product, and the registration process and things like that becomes a little bit different. So I stay within my wheelhouse of premium hand-rolled cigars.
Gotcha.
Where it's just the natural tobacco flavor.
Okay, all right. Just had to throw that in for our many pipe smokers out there, including myself.
Yeah.
But I will say this: since I've started doing this podcast, I've actually probably smoked more cigars in this podcast doing this. Say since what, November?
November. Yeah,
since November, then I probably have more cigars since November than the last 5 years combined. I mean, that's how much of a pipe smoker I was.
Maybe we're converting you to the dark side.
I tell you what. Well, but Sean's out there looking for pipes and stuff now. So
well, it's this time of year where you don't want to waste a good cigar.
Yeah, I hear you. And
Justin, you that's a great segue and kind of one I wanted to bring up next. And I know and Chase, we'll get you on here in just a second. I promise I'm not trying to bogart the mic and stuff. But and I've heard Tomas say this a couple of times, and so I'll kind of let him explain it. But he says, I smoke 1 cigar a week. You've told me that a couple of times. I love how you can do that with your cigars. That you can, if you take a couple of puffs off of it, you set it down, you come back out the next day. So explain them to people how that is with the different process you do with your leaves and stuff.
Yeah, so we do things different than traditional manufacturing. This allows us to have a much more flexible business model. I had a person message me once on Facebook and said, hey, I met Marky Patel, and I asked him what would it take to open up a cigar factory. And he says, if you want to make $1 million in the cigar business, you start with $3 million. And I
believe that.
Yes. And so being able to be successful or at least thrive in the cigar industry, you either have to have a lot of capital or a lot of flexibility. And so when I started doing what we do, it was an evolution of the cigar manufacturing process. It was basically through seeking out faults and errors in the cigar manufacturing process and then re-engineering those faults out. The idea behind that is if you engineer out the failure points, then you don't have to train around those failure points. And so once I start hiring people, I start realizing cigars were plugged, cigars were having to sit because of excess moisture, a lot of different variables that create failure in a cigar. And most of the time, people write it off as being, well, this is just a handmade product. There's going to be failure in it. But the reality is, if you get a bad cigar from Plasencia or Rocky Patel or Alec Bradley or whomever it is, you're just going to throw it away and go buy a new cigar. If somebody gets a bad cigar from me, they're going to walk in my door with a Ziploc bag with a half-smoked cigar and tell me to my face.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh, yeah. Oh, man.
And so for me, at a point of pride, I started looking at the different failure points. What can I do to make it to where the cigar is more smokable in a shorter period of time? What can I do to help eliminate the variables that create plug cigars or the bitter flavors, things like that? So what we do differently is we store our tobacco in a climate-controlled environment. That climate-controlled environment allows the tobacco to be pliable so we can roll it into a cigar without adding excess moisture. Most of the time, they have to take dry leaf and wet it over multiple days to be able to get it to be pliable. But what you're doing is trapping excess moisture in the cigar, so it has to go through what's called a sick period, where it's going to dissipate that excess moisture. In addition to that, by having it sitting in bales and dry storage, it's continuing the fermentation process, which is similar to composting. It gives off gas. Yeah. But because it's covered in burlap and it's all piled up, that gas has nowhere to escape. So that also then gets trapped and transferred into the cigar. So the cigar has to go through a period called the sick period, which can last up to 12 months before it's a smokable cigar. And that's basically just allowing the tobacco to gas off and dry.
Wow.
So we store our tobacco in a different environment so it can do all of that ahead of time. So the cigar is ready to smoke when it's finished. But in addition to that, what happens is when you smoke a cigar, it starts tasting bitter in that second half of the cigar. Or when you relight a cigar, it tastes bitter.
Yes.
And that's because it has the veins. The central midrib vein, in most cases, you'll see posts on social media, and people will justify it and say, well, the veins are in there because it gives off most of the flavor, or because that's gives it rigidity and construction to the cigar, things like that. But the reality is, it's costly. The vein, we buy tobacco by the pound, and so the vein weighs about a third the weight of the leaf. And so 25 to 33% of that weight means that you're throwing away money every time you take that vein and throw it away. We remove the vein out of every leaf in all of our cigars. And the reason why is because the vein, as the tobacco goes through the fermentation process, which is essentially just drying, it's not a chemical fermentation, it's a natural fermentation process. And as it goes through that process, the chemical compounds such as chlorophyll, alkaline, ammonia, excess nicotine is concentrates into that central midrib vein. So as you burn the vein, it starts to release those chemical compounds, which then filters through the second half of your cigar, or it'll concentrate at the burn line. So when you put a cigar out, you go to relight it, you're reburning the high concentration of those chemicals. That's what gives off bitter flavor when you relight a cigar. So the best thing to do is to purge, meaning blowing out, to expel those gases or those compounds before you relight a cigar.
And you guys, now, if you were listening last week, we had a controversy about that, and that's exactly what Mike at Tobacco Pouch said. But his was he had to keep putting it down and relighting it, putting it down, for his business.
Yeah.
But yes, so again, we we've been getting good advice all the way around. So thank you for that.
Yeah. So by purging the cigar, you're expelling out those chemical compounds, which then filter into the second half of your cigar, and that's why when you get to the second half of a cigar, it starts tasting bitter, because then you reburn those chemicals again, give off a bitter flavor. If you keep smoking that cigar, it starts to carbonize those compounds, and then it builds up in the back of your throat, and that's why after smoking a cigar you end up with like for 2 or 3 days, because it's carbonized on the back of your throat and your tonsils.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. See, we just learned something, Justin.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so by removing the veins, the central midrib vein, out of every leaf in all of our cigars, we're reducing the compounds that are present in the cigar. It gives off a much cleaner smoke. You get much more complexity in the flavor. But in addition to that, as you mentioned, I smoke 1 cigar a week. That means I smoke 1 cigar for the whole week, and it lasts me the week. And I'll come back, relight it, and it doesn't have that bitter buildup, because at the burn line, it hasn't concentrated or carbonized those chemical compounds. So there's no need to purge the cigar or anything like that. And we have people test us all the time.
And I'm one of them.
Yeah.
I'm a living testimony, because the first cigar I ever bought from you was your a scissor tail, and it had the what's the green wrapper called?
The Candela.
Candela. And I tested you because you told me that, and I did. I smoked on that thing for a week, and every time I relit it, it was like I was lighting it up for the first time.
Oh wow!
I didn't have to cut it. And then relight it. It was like you said. You just set it and forget it, and then you come back out the next day or the next 2 days, and you didn't have to worry about it. The wrapper falling apart in your hand or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I do it with every one of your cigars, whether it's the Cremosa or the Scissor Tail, the D's Nuts. I can't think of some of the other ones I've had, but yeah, I'm living proof that what he's saying is 100% true.
Yeah, and like I said, we get tested all the time. A lot of people don't believe that, and to me, it shows a higher level of value. You don't have to throw away the cigar if it goes out. Many people out there will say, "I'll never relight a cigar when it goes out because it never tastes the same," and they end up throwing half a cigar away every time. Or I have people come in and say, "Yeah, you know what? My wife called me in to help with the kids and stuff, so I love the fact that I can just go in, do what I got to do, come back out, relight my cigar, and it still tastes good."
And
Excellent.
Especially this time of year when it's -1 or whatever,
Right.
You can take a couple of puffs off of it, set it down, and if the next day is a little bit nicer, go ahead and finish that cigar. Okay. Chase, you got anything you want to say? You want to mention? You want to say? I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Whatever this drink is amazing. I will say that.
Yeah, get a little closer.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're
Is that
good.
good?
Yeah,
you're good.
great now.
So I had a question about the coffee. How do you? What is that? I don't really know much about coffee, but I don't really know how. What is the process of making coffee taste different than other?
Sure.
coffees?
So the coffee that we do, so the way the coffee came about, so I spent some time in Nicaragua and hiked up a volcano out there called Volcán Mombacho. And halfway up the volcano, I saw this old lady, and she had a young child strapped to her back, and she had a large bag strapped to her front, and she was out picking wild coffee berries. And then halfway up the volcano, there's a little house, and they had fresh coffee, and it was just like a little stand. And it was a really cool experience. And so I've always wanted to do something with coffee. I created a cigar here called the Cremosa. It was just like a really creamy, just easy smoking cigar. And it's like, man, that would go great with coffee. And a former employee who worked here, Evan, unfortunately he's passed, so
sorry.
R.I.P. Evan.
Right.
But he was really on to me about, you got to make coffee. You got to do a coffee for this cigar. And he harassed me for like 2 months that you got to do a coffee for this cigar. So I was like, all right. And the idea behind it was that we had to have a coffee. I wanted to make a coffee that was going to be low acid, specifically because tobacco has alkaline. High alkaline and high acid gives off astringency. So it's a pH balance aspect of it. The other aspect of that was also to have complementary flavors. And I thought to myself, it would be really cool to be able to have same origin coffee and tobacco. So the idea behind that, what grows together goes together. And so the tobacco in the cigar, we use some Brazilian and some Nicaraguan tobacco. So I decided to use Brazilian and Nicaraguan coffee beans. So the coffee that we use is a Brazilian Cerrado, which is a honey or natural processed. So there's 3 ways to process coffee in the drying process. You take the whole berry, and you allow it to dry in the whole berry, skins, pulp, and everything. And that's called natural processing. And then there's honey processing, where it's just the pulp. And then there's dry process, where it's just the bean extracted from the berry and drying it without any influence from the pulp or the skins. And so each of those different processes is going to yield different characteristics in the coffee itself. And so we use a Brazilian cerrado, which is natural processed, so it's processed and dried with the pulp and the skins, and that gives a little bit of a kind of a cranberry, fruity note on the finish. And then from there we use it's a Nicaraguan Isabela organic honey processed bean, and it's from Nicaragua. And the honey process is just the pulp, which gives you a little bit more of a creamy nuttiness and oily complexity to the coffee bean. So I use a 50-50 blend of those two, and then I roast it to a 500 degrees temperature. So we do what's called a double crack. So we allow the coffee to come to a first crack. Basically, it's like popping like popcorn. So once it starts, we allow it to cool, so it retains its oils, and then we bring it back up temperature again, and then do a second crack.
Wow!
And then we bring it back, cool it quickly under fans, and that allows the tobacco or the coffee to retain some of the nice oily, creamier mouthfeel to the coffee, and that pairs really well with the cigar as well. So a lot of people enjoy our coffee because it has a nice creamy texture without having to add any dairy or cream to it.
Wow.
And that low acidity and everything.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I love drinking a coffee with a cigar. It just goes so well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this, I know Chase loves a dark, oily wrapper. What is that usually? Is that like a Nicaraguan wrapper, or is that something you can get a Dominican? Any of those wrappers, can you make them like that? Like, is it an aging thing? Or?
So what happens when you get a really dark, oily wrapper? If you get a box of cigars and they all look uniformly black and oily, most of the time those tobaccos have been processed. It's called Bethune. It's a secondary processing where they boil the tobacco, and sometimes they'll add caramel color, sometimes they add seasoning, things like that, to get that consistency in that black coloration. If you watch videos on YouTube, you'll see that black comes off and their hands are all colored and dark and stuff like that. And that's because it's a secondary process. So we don't do any secondary processing on any of our tobaccos. So you'll always see variation, particularly when you get into the darker leaves like the oscuros or the maduros. You'll see variation in our leaf because I don't do anything in secondary post-process on the tobacco. So a lot of times you can tell when you're smoking a cigar that has gone through a secondary process. Usually when you're smoking the cigar right behind that burn line, you'll see the burn and then a lighter color, which is the natural color of the leaf, and then you'll see like a really glossy sheen where it's caramelizing the sugars and stuff from that whatever caramel color, whatever they added, and then you got that dark inky blackness of the cigar.
I have seen that, I wondered. I just never really thought about that. Oh, that's just how a cigar is, but no, okay.
Yeah, tobacco doesn't ferment that dark.
Wow, okay.
So your Maduros are not going to be as dark as some others.
Yeah, they're not going to have that really just oily, dark, black, inky color to it.
Now, something else I wanted to touch on. So, like, they say that different cigar makers will have, like, a different, because we always give the size of our cigar, like, 6 by 50 or, 7 by 48 or whatever, and they say that they use a different blend to approximate the flavor for each size. Like, it's not just at least according to them, it's not just a leaf and you cut it down to size what you need. What do you think about that, and is that something you do, like a different blend for each, say, a Toro, Robusto, what have you?
Yeah, so what we do differently than traditional manufacturing is we have more variety than traditional manufacturers in terms of blends. So what happens is if you take one cigar and you size it down, you have to change the ratio of leaf to size it down.
Okay.
So you do have to
Gotcha.
readjust the blend. That's why when you get a cigar from a Cigar Aficionado magazine, this was 98 points or whatever it was, and then you're like, you know what, I don't want to go pay $40 for that cigar. I'm going to buy a different size that costs maybe $15, and you're like not impressed,
Right.
Because it's not the same blend. It's not going to be the same
Uh-huh.
flavor profile. So if you have a cigar, for example, that is a 60 ring gauge cigar, the ratio of filler leaf versus the wrapper leaf is going to be significantly different if you take that same cigar and do it, say, in a Lonsdale when it's like a 38 ring gauge cigar. So the wrapper leaf on a 38 ring gauge cigar is going to have significantly more influence in the flavor profile than, say, a 60 ring gauge cigar. So you have to make accommodations for that, but you can't necessarily replicate the exact same flavor profile because the ratio of leaf will have to change to accommodate the different sizes.
Okay, so they were kind of at least telling them mostly the truth there about it does matter. So that's why the size, like if I told Sean, oh, I had this great Churchill, and if he went and bought that same cigar, say in a Toro, he might get a very different experience.
Yeah, most of the time when you're going from like a Churchill to a Toro, it's going to be minimal. But if you're going from like a Churchill to, say, like a Corona, where it's a smaller ring gauge and stuff, then you're going to see a little bit more significant.
So it's the ring gauge that really makes a difference.
Yeah, so because like a Churchill to a Toro, it's just same diameter, just cut down in length.
Okay.
Right, so you're going to use essentially the same ratio of leaf. It's just going to be a shorter cigar. Where it comes to a big change or changes in the quantity of filler is when you're expanding in terms of diameter. Because you got to make it a fatter cigar, so you got to add more filler to accommodate a bigger size. But it also changes the amount of airflow and things like that as well, because a larger ring gauge cigar, you need a looser draw so it can have more oxygen and burn more materials, whereas like a smaller ring gauge cigar, you want it to have a little bit of resistance, more of a medium draw, so you could pick up a little bit more, or actually it gives a little bit of a slower burn, and you pick up a little bit more richness in the flavor. That's why people are really leaning toward like Lonsdales, Panatellas and stuff right now, because they're finding that you get more richness and flavor in those cigars because you're getting just like a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio,
Right,
as opposed to like the other larger cigars.
All right, so I have to ask. This comes around on our podcast almost every episode. So you're smoking your cigar. Punch, V-cut, guillotine. What do you think?
Well, everybody says it's a matter of preference, and it is.
Right.
So I will say that I always advise people, find a cigar that you like and then find the cut that you like for that cigar. The reason for that is that our anatomy of taste is broken down in zones on the palate. For example, the tip of the tongue, you get more of your spice. So when you smoke a cigar that's real spicy and burns the tip of your tongue, you may find that if you do a punch cut on that cigar, it's going to push the smoke back to the mid palate, so the spice is more subtle and picks up more on the finish, as opposed to being like primary red at the tip of the tongue.
Okay.
You might find that cigars that tend to have a little bit more of like a sweeter flavor profile, if you like, say, like if you get like an acid or a Cuba Cuba or Fat Bottom Betty, things like that, the sweet zone on the palate is going to be right behind the tip of the tongue. That's where you taste sweet. And so doing something that's more like either a straight guillotine cut or even like a V cut, you might get a little bit more sweetness on the palate as opposed to doing a punch cut. So, it is a matter of preference, but you might find that your preference might change with the cigar.
Oh, okay.
See, and mine has, because when I first started smoking a cigar, it was more out of fear of ruining a good cigar with a guillotine cut, because you never know, like you don't want to cut off too much of that cap in, right? And so to me, the punch was safe. Like, I'm not going to screw the cigar up too bad punching it. But now I've moved into, I really like a V cut. I feel like I find myself getting, and maybe it's because I'm getting a little bit more of that sweetness and a little bit more, even sometimes like that leather, I'm getting it a little bit more. And maybe it's because I'm just hitting that different zone on my palate, like you said.
People tend to find that the V-cut puts out a larger fan of smoke, so you get a more even distribution on the palate, as opposed to a narrow stream down the middle of the palate. And so so you can find that a lot of people tend to, right now, are gearing toward the V-cut, because it allows for a little bit more complexity. There's a lot of cigars out there that tend to be very one-dimensional, and changing how you cut the cigar can actually add a little bit more complexity to the cigar.
Excellent.
So, out of all the cigars that you've made, which one has been kind of like? I know the Scissor Tail's probably like your baby because that started everything,
that's our
right?
flagship.
But is there one to you that like? Have you made one for yourself personally that you haven't released to the public, or?
Yeah, so my favorite cigar that I've made every year, it's actually my favorite cigar every year is our anniversary cigar.
Okay.
But on our anniversary, I make a new blend every year. And so we can't recreate it. I always do something that makes it difficult for me to be able to recreate that cigar. So when I say it's exclusive or limited, it's limited to me even. So for example, the first anniversary, I grew tobacco here in the shop, and I used the tobacco that I grew in our first anniversary cigar.
That's so cool.
There was no way for me to be able to replicate that cigar. Last year, I used tobacco that was from Peru, that was 14-year-old tobacco. That it was the last that was on hand at my distributor, and I was like, I'll just take the last couple pounds you got, and I can't recreate that cigar anymore. And so every year when I do an anniversary cigar, I put a lot of effort into creating the most complex cigar to date, and then try to top it the next year.
And when is that anniversary?
Yeah, when does that
cigar?
come out?
It's in October every year.
Okay.
October.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. And then you do one for St. Patrick's Day. Every year. Are you still doing that?
Yeah, we do seasonal cigars. Our Irish Wolfhound is
Irish
the one we do
Wolfhound,
for
that's
St.
it.
Patrick's Day.
Excellent cigar.
Yeah.
Excellent cigar.
That one was meant to have a little bit of a ginger note to it. When I was in the liquor industry, I worked for liquor distributors and brokers, and when I was working with Jameson Irish whiskey, there was this whole thing of Jameson and ginger ale. So I wanted to create a cigar that pairs with an Irish whiskey that has a little bit of a ginger note to it. So the idea behind the Irish Wolfhound is to have it to where it pairs well with Irish whiskeys.
All right, so I'm getting pretty excited about that. Then, so when can we see a rollout of that? Would you estimate?
Yeah, so we do the Irish Wolfhound every March.
Every March.
So
Yep, for the month of March.
coming up pretty quickly.
And then we do Cinco de Mayo. We always do a cigar called El Caballero de Mexico, which is the gentleman from Mexico. That one we do primarily Mexican tobaccos. It's a really unique cigar because it is 90% Mexican tobacco leaf, and that one has a really nice creamy woodsy note to it. Pairs really well with the reposado tequilas. We do one on 4th of July that's called the American Puro, which means pure American, 100% American tobacco. That one we're using tobacco from Maryland, Kentucky, Virginia, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And we use a smoked tobacco from Kentucky that is fire cured, and it has a really nice light, almost like barbecued ribs flavor to it.
You got me there.
Yeah.
See, Justin likes the whiskey. I like the ribs.
Yeah, I like them.
Yeah, so we try to mix in some really unique stuff that you normally won't find anywhere else in the world.
And you have this posted on your website so people can check in and say, what's next?
Exactly, yeah, and we send out newsletters and stuff as well, letting people know what we have coming up.
Yeah, make sure you sign up for that email.
So, Sean, don't forget to tell them where they can stop in and see Mr.
Yeah,
Tomas.
so we are, I say 31st and Sheridan, but there's probably an actual physical address. I'll let Tomas give that because I know we're in the Mall 31 shopping center here. But,
The address is 6390 East 31st Street, Suite C.
Suite C.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I promise you, you're going to come in for the cigar, but you're going to leave with an education and probably about 6 cigars.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
And, but that's, it's, and I love hearing your story every time I hear it because it's not just, you think of success in a business and it's like a packed store, right? Mm-hmm. Where you have some loyal followers and you have people that are, you're doing these cigar rolling classes and the organizations in town that you're being so kind to be there for, but you also have an international
Correct.
customer base, and that's just, to me, it's so great,
Yeah. Well, again, that kind of goes back to the diversity and the flexibility in the process. Creating a process that allows us to operate in just-in-time inventory, allows us to go from leaf to smoke in 24 hours, creates a lot more flexibility in the business model. Traditional manufacturers they're a one-trick pony. It's you make cigars, you let them sit, you can't sell them until they're ready. and that can take up to a year. So the variety of tobacco and the variety of cigars that they produce is going to be much smaller, because it doesn't make sense to make millions of cigars for next year in all these different varieties. Instead, they're going to have a smaller selection and a higher quantity to be able to have ready on hand. So we have clients come to us all the time saying, I want to get a custom blend. Can you send me some samples? And I say, no, I can't. I can send you some of the cigars that we offer, but none of those will be your blend.
Yeah.
Because your blend is going to be the cigar that we make for you.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the difference between the way we operate, whereas traditional manufacturers, if you want to create your own cigar blend or your cigar brand, they're going to send you 5 or 6 samples of stuff that they already have aging, that already have sitting in their aging room, going through that sick period and all that kind of stuff. So your cigar may be the same cigar that they're selling to somebody in Florida or somebody in Massachusetts under their own label or their own brand or whatever it might be. So the idea of exclusivity doesn't exist, with the exception of what we do here.
Yeah.
So
go ahead,
just give us an idea about how many cigars. And you are the exclusive roller, is that correct?
So myself and Philip.
You got 2 guys.
Yeah.
So the way I akin to what we do is like an artist studio.
Okay, gotcha.
So you go to an artist studio, they're going to have prints, reproductions. Here's a painting that I did. It's in this museum. You can get a reproduction print of it in my studio at a gift shop. Or you can commission an exclusive artwork that you can have made specific to your house and your design elements, things like that.
So about how many cigars go out of here a month, would you say?
We produce about 2,000 to 3,000 cigars a month.
A month, guys. Yeah. That's a month. 2 guys rolling.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's pretty incredible to me.
And the one thing I wanted to kind of touch on before, I want to make sure we include this in here, is you had a comedian that you hand rolled for. What was his name? Bert
Kreischer.
Yes. Yeah. And then he actually started hand rolling his own blend that you made him or something like that,
right? So the
right?
way that worked out was the Paycom Center hired me. So we do, most of the time when they have acts that are cigar smokers, they'll have me backstage rolling cigars for the act and the crew, and while they set up before the performance. This one was unique because Bert Kreischer wanted to do a cigar rolling class. So what I did was, ahead of the class, I watched him on podcasts. I studied what cigars he enjoys, what he likes about cigars, the size, things like that. So then I took all that information and extrapolated what I needed to know to be able to develop a cigar for Bert Kreischer to his tastes, to his preferences. So then we did the private cigar rolling class for him and Tiffany Haddish and a few other art comedians while they were on tour. And he got to learn how to roll the cigar that was designed specifically for him and his taste palette. And so it was unique because I was able to kind of combine the cigar rolling class with the custom blend service that we offer.
Oh, wow.
That is so cool.
That is excellent.
Yeah. And I mean, I keep wanting to call you the professor because so you guys can come down to Ultimo Cigars and see the professor, Tomas. Yeah. I don't know if that's what he really wants you to call him. But
call me anything you want. Just not late for lunch.
That's right.
I hear that. I hear that.
And so when you do smoke a cigar, do you have a preferred ring gauge that you like?
No, I kind of, that's the cool thing about the way I develop cigars. It gives me a lot of variety. Especially when I'm doing the custom stuff. The cool thing about doing these custom blends, it takes me outside of my box. Same thing with an artist. Again, I have an art background. I used to do oil painting, wood sculpture, and show in museums and galleries and stuff. But as an artist, you tend to kind of get pigeonholed into replicating the same style over and over and over, because you get known for that. Or it's the same thing like with, Sing Freebird.
Yes.
It's the same song every time, right? And so same thing with the cigars. When I'm developing a cigar, I know that the scissor tail is successful. I know that these particular blends do well. So sometimes I got to get myself outside the box. And so when I do these custom blends, it really takes me outside of my own personal box. I'm smoking cigars that I normally wouldn't pick up and able to create these really cool, unique blends. And so really just, it depends on the mood. Sometimes I'll smoke a small ring gauge Cremosa. Sometimes I'll smoke a 60 ring gauge cigar. It'll depend on what I'm working on at the time. Sometimes if I really enjoy a cigar that I made for somebody as a custom blend, I'll make a couple extra, smoke it myself. It's like, let's throw another extra 5 in there.
Hey, we better be careful. We may end up with a Smoking Sounds blend.
Ooh, our own custom.
We're going to pretend like me and Justin have ever smoked an Opus X, but But I tell you that Silver Creek or the Crow Creek Silver Band Silver
the
Edition.
silver label, yeah.
Holy. Insert the delete button right there, guys, because that was a hell of a cigar.
Yeah.
And, every time I smoke one of your cigars, I think, oh, it's going to be hard to top this one. Now, these nuts, if I'm going to keep an eye, listen, at Ultimo Cigars on social media, you guys help me keep an eye out for these D's nuts. And y'all, if I'm sleeping, y'all let me know. I don't want to miss out. I'm literally like 2 blocks work from here, so I'm going to come running over here. So you guys let me know if I fall asleep on the job. But you said that those wrappers that you used in that kind of faded away or so.
Well, so in that cigar, we use both a Ecuadorian Connecticut shade wrapper and we use a Mexican San Andres Oscuro wrapper. The Mexican San Andres. So what happened a lot of times, or a lot of people are realizing that during COVID, the tobacco usually ages between 2 to 4 years. And so 2 to 4 years ago, 4 years ago particularly, we were in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the tobaccos weren't getting farmed, weren't getting harvested. Stuff was dying in the field. And so the yield and accessibility for some of these tobaccos is very limited right now because we're just coming out of that COVID era. And so, for example, with the Mexican San Andres wrapper, we've been having a hard time getting some of that leaf. Should be coming into stock from what I've heard from my distributor, February, March, somewhere around there. But it's
you
been
guys
about
heard that
it's been
February or
about a year.
March.
And so some of the leaf we just can't get a hold of anymore, or it's just we're on a long wait list due to the COVID stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And you
Right.
see that not just with us, but also a lot of other major manufacturers are switching leaves. You'll find that some of the tobaccos that they're using, because they do that secondary processing, get that dark coloration, they'll substitute leaves.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing in the market that some manufacturers are actually substituting or relaunching cigars with a different wrapper leaf.
So, outside of Ultimo cigar, because that's all of our favorite cigars, is there a cigar that you preferred? Like, was there a Perdomo or a Padron or Davidoff? Is there anything that you preferred?
So my 2 favorite cigars that I used to smoke, and I still on occasion will, are the Ashton BSGs and Arturo Fuente Hemingway line.
Okay.
Hemingway line. Okay.
Yeah, those
Gotcha.
are
Yeah.
kind of my favorite, my go-tos.
Yeah, I've had a couple of Ashtons, and those are decent cigars. I just got introduced to Padron cigars this summer, and so I've started kind of liking those. So
Yeah, those
those
are
may
good,
have to
rich
be
flavor
included
cigar.
in the Smoke and Sounds profile. We'll let you know when those. And we've even designed our own cigar label, so it's like a match made in heaven. Ultimo Cigars and Smoke and Sounds. It's almost
hear
like it
ya.
was meant to be.
It
show.
was. That's right, McMahon.
We'll get more local than that.
Well, hey, listen. So, Chase, you got anything else you want to ask before we start wrapping this up?
I mean, he pretty much told me more than I've ever even thought about cigars. So I don't have a lot of questions.
Oh, I hear you.
Well, I'm hoping you and Justin can get the grand tour of the humidor and all that. Like I said, when I first walked in, it was just I'll never forget that, and I can never thank you for your hospitality
Absolutely.
and again for doing this with us. Do you got anything you want to bring up before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, just check out our website. We do a lot of really cool, unique cigars. Our cigars will have anywhere from 4 up to 8 different countries of origin in one cigar, so you'll get a lot more complexity than what you're finding in the market. The custom stuff, we're the only factory in the world. I'm the only person in the world that offers that service. So
Wow.
if you want exclusive, you can't get more exclusive than that.
That's
Oh my
right.
gosh,
and make sure
yeah.
you put in the comments or in the email or whatever that you heard Tomas on Smoke and Sounds. It's probably not going to get you anything. We just want to let Tomas know that you guys heard him and fell in love with him on our show here.
And definitely, if you're in the Tulsa area, definitely come on by.
Yeah, if you're not coming by Ultimo Cigars,
I don't know.
you need to be.
I don't.
You're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And,
mean,
and even if you're just a coffee drinker, you say, well, I'm not really. That coffee just sounds fantastic,
Yeah.
and it's so hard to find really good. Stuff you don't have to order online or whatever, and so definitely want to take advantage of that. And of course, if you are a cigar smoker, absolutely get both, and you'll be set up. I'm just sure of it.
yeah, I mean, because and I love our local cigar shops, and so I don't mean this in a disrespectful way at all. I can go to any one of those shops and pick up a Perdomo 10th anniversary.
Right.
I can only come to one Ultimo. I can only come and have hand rolled. And you're talking and having a conversation with the gentleman that just rolled your cigar, and you're getting an education from the professor, and you're just it's gonna be a little bit more special of a cigar.
Yeah, we try to offer just a different level of experience.
Yeah, and that's what it is. I mean, I encourage anybody, if you have an opportunity, come by the shop. But if not, if you are a cigar smoker, you have to. Now, do you sell single sticks online?
So online, it'll vary based on the cigars itself. We try to keep it within a entry-level price point around $40 to $50.
Right.
Some cigars, that means it's 2 cigars. Some cigars means it's 5 cigars.
Right.
So it'll vary based on the size, shape, and blend, things like that.
Because I guess it probably doesn't really make sense to send one cigar to New York or something.
Right, with shipping costs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now everyone wants to know. So what's the ETA of the new Ultimo camo hats?
Yes, that's.
I'm sure that one's going to be hot on our list.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll be putting those together for the summer.
That's right.
Okay, for the summertime.
Yes.
And again, what I'm watching, the Irish Wolfhound cigar should be available in March.
Yeah, so we do offer our limited edition seasonal cigars year round, but we make them to order. And so for example, if it's the middle of December and somebody wants to do the Irish Wolfhound, you can order online. You just got to give us a couple extra days to put into rotation.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, Justin, what do you got before we get out of here?
Well, I just want to thank Mr. Tomas for having us in here to kind of disrupt his day. Well, by the way, if you did hear anything in the background, there is a four-legged friend who wanted to be on the podcast, but we put our 2 feet down instead of 4 feet, and so she wasn't able to be on. But maybe next time we can have her jump on the mics and stuff. And so if you heard that, so other than that, by the way, be tuned in for next week. Next week, it'll be the countdown to the WWE's Royal Rumble, and it's going to be a wrestling podcast. If we have to change it at the last minute, we'll let everybody know, but that's certainly what we have for next week. But again, weather, sickness, a lot of things happen at this time of year. Big kudos to Jessica, who you all heard last week. Now, she's under the weather this week, but she's still either Sean snuck out or she let him come and do this podcast here at Ultimo. But in either case, get well soon, Miss Jessica, and thanks for being such a good sport, even if you don't feel like it right at this moment.
That's right. And hey, we always got to say thank you to our loyal followers and listeners. Matthew at budget.smoker or budget.cigar.smoker. You know the crazy gringo over there, J Ram. That's right. Hey, Kevin at Cigars with Kevin. Big Al at Cigars with Big Al. See, I always get those mixed up. Sorry, guys. Ben and the boys over at the Leaf Cutters. Carrie at Cowboy HD11. Jim. Thanks. We had a gentleman, he was going to drive down from Chicago, wanted to have a cigar with us. The Kai crew up there, his son is in the Army. And if you guys want to follow his son, it's at the OLECHAPSHERF, the old chaps. I don't know how.
I don't know how to say that either.
Yeah, I'm going to mess it up. But hey, thank you for your service.
But he did spell it.
And hey, as always, we got Chase here with us.
Thank you, Chase, for coming out.
At Pipes. Here, you get it.
At Pipes_and_sticks.
That's a lot of ands and underscores, Justin. I don't know how we keep up with that. But listen, again, I cannot thank Tomas enough.
Thank you, sir, for having us in again. And again, tune in next week. The countdown to Royal Rumble. Somehow we love wrestling too.
That's right.
And so somehow that works into smoke, whiskey, coffee, beer, barbecue, wrestling. See, it all kind of fits.
See, now Tomas he's going to have to make a Royal Rumble blend.
Oh my gosh! We're going to try that one with that smoky Kentucky in it for when we do our barbecue podcast next time or whatever.
Absolutely.
And oh man, we're gonna. So don't worry, we're gonna be back.
Listen, make sure you subscribe to Smoking Sounds on your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on all social medias at Smoking Sounds Pod to never miss a beat or a draw. And that's a wrap on today's episode of Smoking Sounds. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Thank you to Chase for coming by. Again, a big thank you to Tomas here at Ultimo Cigars for having us into his establishment and giving us a more of an education than we could have ever hoped for. Please follow him on all social medias. Jump on his website. Order a couple of sticks from him. I promise you're not going to be disappointed. Remember to follow us on the social medias. And remember that all great podcasts start with a single episode. And today, that episode is Smoking Sounds.